What's up, Internet? This is your buddy Rafik Donna here again. Today I'm starting a new series on ETL processes, and so I'm going to start with external tables within the Oracle Database Engine. If you explore the Oracle Database architecture, you realize that the data within our tables and indexes are actually stored in data files, and when we make a request to the instance loads this data from the table from the data files into memory and then saves our request. If you're a DBA, you will manage these files by expanding them to provide more space and also backing them up and using them to restore the database should something go wrong. As a developer, however, we do not necessarily care about the physical interaction of the engine with these files. What we do care about are the logical objects that we create to form our application. So we create tables, indexes, material views, and all the other objects that forms our application, and allow the Oracle Database Engine itself to take care of how it stores the data for our application within the physical system. There are instances, however, where we need to interact with external files. So we create logical objects within the Oracle database that points to these external files, and when we query them, they will present the data that resides in the external sources to us as if they were Oracle internal heap tables. So if you take a look at this diagram, I have sales data in the example that I'm going to show you pretty soon. I have sales data that resides outside of the control of the Oracle Database Engine, and I'm going to create logical tables that will consume data from these files and present them to me when I make a request to the Oracle Engine. There are some steps that you need to follow in order to create an external table. So first of all, you need to create a directory object under the sys account and then grant permissions on that object to any user that needs to interact with the external sources. And lastly, you will create your external table. Let's see how that goes. So I have this file right here, which is a CSV file that is sent to me by one of my clients. It contains sales data. The first line is the header, and this is the data. I need to create a table within my database that will present this data to me when I query it. Okay, so we're going to follow the steps I outlined earlier to create this table. So let's go ahead and do that. As I said earlier, we're going to start with the directory object. So I'm going to switch over to the sys account and then drop this object if it already exists. Then I will create it and grant the read permission to the LDEV developer, and that is the user we're going to use to create our object. So I'll go ahead and grant that. With that done, I can query it to make sure that it actually exists. Yes, it is right here. So I'm going to switch over to LDEV developer to create my external table. First, let me just drop the table if it already exists. That is dropped. Now I'll create my external table. The syntax is pretty much similar to the heap table creation. It just have additional clauses that tells the engine that the data needs to come from an external source. So we have the columns and the data type specification right here, and you can additionally add your default and constraints as the requirement will demand. Then your external clauses. So I have organization external. This clause tells the Oracle engine that the data for this particular table is coming from an external source, and I'm going to use this engine to interact with the external data, and that data resides in this particular location, which is the virtual object or virtual directory that we created earlier. I will specify my access parameters that describe the data within the file. The first line says that each line within my file is actually a record, and I have 3 login files that I need to log the operation as this application runs. So if I do a select statement on this table and there are some bad records there, I'm going to dump them into the bad file. Okay, if there are some records that I need to skip, I'll put them into the discard file, and the whole operation will be logged into the log file. Because the first line is the header, I'm going to skip that. And the fields are separated by a comma. That's why it is a CSV file. The dates within the data is of this format. All fields are included. Any missing data that I encounter will be considered to be null. And this is the file that this table points to. And I'm going to have an unlimited number of bad record before I can abort this operation. If I had a number here, then if I had a certain number of bad records that hit that threshold, then the whole operation will be aborted. So let's go ahead and create this table. I think it is created. Okay, so as you can see, we haven't inserted any record into this table, and yet we should be able to select from it. So I'll go ahead and do a select statement, and you see we have this. Okay, this is to tell you that the data from this is coming from this file, because we never inserted any record into the table, and yet we are following the data. So this will tell you that the data is actually coming from this. Okay, you can add where clauses as you will normally do for a select statement, and that is it. Okay, so this is very cool. Okay, Oracle is actually very innovative and creative in this particular technology. Let's assume that our client comes over and say, hey, I forgot to add these last 4 records when I was sending the file to you. Can you add these records and process them? Now, as you can see, this is the same, it has the same format as the previous file, but it just has different record. Okay. If you take a look at the create table, external table, we had to hard code the file that the table points to. So anytime we do a select statement, we are actually pulling the data from this file here. What if we need to change our select statement to point to a new file instead of this? Do we actually need to create another external table to be able to do that? The good news is if you're running 12c release 2 and above, I believe, you do not necessarily need to create another external table. You can modify your select statement to point to the new file, and you'll be good, and you'll be able to consume data from that new file. Let's see how that works. So I'm going to say select all from the same table, that is sales xt. But I also need to add an external modify clause. So I'll say external modify. And what am I modifying? I'm modifying the location to point to the new file. Okay. So I'm going to put that right here. And the new file is additional. Like so. Okay. So if I run this select statement, it is actually going to consume the data from this new file instead of from this file. Let's say this file only contains 4 records, so it should present me with only 4 records. Let's run it and see if this is true. Indeed, it has returned only the 4 records that we have, and this confirms that we now point into the new file instead of the old one that we used to create the external table. You can also even add your where clauses. So let's say, for example, if I add this clause right here, actually let me take the payment type out. Okay, and run this. I will only get 2 records, and these are only coming from this. So we have one United States, one here, and one also here. And these are the records that are presented to me. So again, this confirms that the data that we are pulling right now in this new select statement is coming from the new table instead of the old table. Okay, this is very cool. Normally, when you receive files like this, external files from your client, you wouldn't just be selecting them as we have done. You want to be able to do some kind of analytics or produce some weekly or monthly report out of that. So I have two analytic queries that I'm going to use to do some aggregation of the data that I received. So in this first one, I'm going to be finding the most recent purchase. Go ahead and run this statement, and we'll see the results right here. Okay, so this is another one. I want to be able to see the total sales for each product for each country, and I want to see only the top 5 performing products. Okay, so again, you can see the results right here. Okay, if you only want to have a one-time select statement from your external source, then you may not even need to create an external table. You just need to specify in your select statement that you are consuming from an external source. And this is the statement. It's kind of similar to the create external table statement, but it just strips some of the unnecessary clauses. So we'll have the same select statement here, and we specify that it's coming from an external source. We have the column specified. We specify the engine we're going to use to interact with the data. We specify the directory object and our access parameters, the location, our reject clause, and optional our where clause. So if you run this statement, you should be able to get the results. Let's see. Yep. So this is the results that we see. Actually, it is coming from that smaller file. If I change this one back to the bigger file, we should get more records. So let's go ahead and run it again. So you see we have more records returned as a result. So all of these are very cool ways of interacting with the external sources. And in my later video, I'm going to see how we will use this concept to actually implement a full-blown application that will consume data and use that to perform weekly report or weekly analytics to update our dashboards. This is not an exhaustive explanation of external tables. If you want to learn more, you can go onto the Oracle online documentation. I believe it's the utilities book, or you can listen to the experts at Oracle, the ArcStorm team, for example, Steve, Connor McDonald, and Chris. They are very good guys, very expert knowledge in Oracle, PL, SQL, and so forth. You can listen to them and you gain more insight. I actually learn from them. So this is all that I have for you today. If you like this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe. You can also send in your comments so that I will see how to improve the content of these educational videos. Without all anything again, I'll say good morning. Bye.